Hi folks, I'd like to introduce you to Mobilize. It's a conference being produced by GigaOM. It's going to bring together the thought leaders and practitioners of the mobile web ecosystems for discussions, demonstrations, and debate. It's September 30th, 2010 at the Mission Bay Conference Center in San Francisco. Untether.tv is a media sponsor, and if you register using the code UntetherTV, you'll save $100 off the cover price. Highly recommend you go. Highly recommend you participate, and then give me some feedback when you've returned. To register, go to www.mobilizeconf.com. mobilizeconf.com. I'd like to introduce you to the Location-Based Marketing Summit, September 29th to 30th, 2010 in New York City. It's a place where you can have all your questions answered around what's working today in this growing space. They've got a great lineup, guys like Adam Ostro, guys like Sam Taggart from VaynerMedia, guys like Worley from Chaotic Moon, and yours truly will be participating in this. So come on out, September 29th to 30th in New York. Visit www.locationmarketingsummit.com to register. Hope to see you there. This episode is brought to you by Mobility Public Relations, the full-service PR agency created specifically for mobility technology companies just like yours.
This is Untether.tv, where we get inside the business of mobile. Here's your host, Rob Woodbridge.
Hi everybody, welcome to Untether.tv, where we get inside the business of mobile. I'm joined from across the pond, but still under the Commonwealth, the great, monarchy that rules over Canada. You know, it rules over the UK as well. I'm joined by Alistair Crane, who is the CEO of Grapple Mobile. Alistair, thank you for coming on and telling your story to the Untether crowd. Welcome.
Hey, Rob. Thank you very much.
So we were just talking about the fact that while you're in London, I got a quick tour of the office space. This technology actually hails from the great country across the pond from you, which is the country that I'm from, which is Canada. So, I want to touch on that a little bit, but maybe give a little bit of history of what Grapple is, and let's see where it came from.
Sure.
How does Canada fit into this?
So I'll come on to Canada. Grapple was basically formed out of an idea. Actually, you hear about all these businesses, all these startups formed out of really noble thoughts into the future. Facebook about wanting to revolutionize communication and connect people all for free, this kind of stuff. Actually, for me, it was just born out of a demand from the market. And it wasn't just the market in the UK, just globally, actually, for the ability to take ideas, concepts for applications, but also applications that have already been created on one platform, be that iPhone or BlackBerry or Android, and actually just make them available to as many people as possible. So I think anyone just thinking to develop for one platform is actually already out of date. So it's not right now. That's been happening for a while. Yes. And it was my time when I was at Navtech, which was acquired by Nokia, of course, that I was working with brands, agencies, and businesses on a location-based front. And we started to get involved in location-based applications. And there was more and more demand coming from these brands and these agencies. And they're saying, look, can you help me? How do I take this application for my clients or for my business and make it available to more than just one platform? Yeah. And actually, this was something that I just saw growing even outside of Nokia. So that's where I was considering that in my current role there. Met a business partner, as everybody does, someone who can really help you make it happen, someone with a great background in tech, a guy called Jamie True, who's the founder of the business. And between us, we went about seeing what pieces we needed to put together in order to make this happen. Now, the market suffers or has suffered until we came along with the issue on, for sure, you can go cross-platform. You have your developers that can create you an iPhone app. Then you have your BlackBerry-specific developers and Android and so on and so forth. But actually, the big issues weren't finding the people necessarily, though as you start to get to the slightly more of mainstream handsets, you have to search harder and harder for your really experienced developers. And that directly increases your cost. So you have to pay for a different developer base for all the different platforms, So it's just a multiplier effect. And that's the same with time too. And when you think about brands and businesses who want to use applications on a marketing front, that's actually quite prohibitive. Not just cost, because a lot of brands have some pretty major budgets if you can prove the activity works, but just time, Waiting 3 months for an application to get turned around for most people is unacceptable. Their TV's gone live and then gone off air. So is their outdoor and their press, and they're on, they can get a Facebook app live in a couple of weeks, max. Yep. So so what's the deal with this mobile thing, was with the feedback I was getting. Now, of course, we could have done what a lot of other people before us had done, which was go and put together teams, essentially, and they could have been outsourced, you know, to a place where you could get cheaper labor, and you could have built teams around iPhone specialists and BlackBerry specialists and so on. But actually, we thought that there should be some kind of tech solution. And as I mentioned, Jamie, my partner, his background is extensive in just finding interesting businesses to invest in. And we found a company that had been backed by one of the largest VCs in Canada. You may know them, a company called Brightspark. And they'd invested in this business that basically had been going for 4 years, had about 40 developers working on it out there. And they'd created a platform that allows you to work in web front-end language, so HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it actually does a lot of the hard work for you in the whole compilation piece, and actually creates native applications on all of the major platforms, so iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, and then Nokia, Samsung, Sony Ericsson, in the form of Java binaries. And then makes it available for you to submit either through an app store or to a third-party host. So we heard about this business actually up for sale. We acquired the IP, and we used the UK as our launch territory for the new business. So we didn't keep any names from old, anything like that. Rebranded as Grapple, opened our doors in January, and it's been a roller coaster ride. And the great thing is, you know, I think with anything, it's not just about taking IP. It's just, and part of the IP for me, and people often forget this, is the people. You know, right. There was the team in Canada that had put blood, sweat, and tears for, as I mentioned, over 4 years into this. So we basically launched with a Toronto office handling all of the platform development, and they are absolute experts, incredible backgrounds, all of them, led by a guy called Alan Lisney, who's our COO, fantastic guy. And he and his team basically make sure that the platform is able to cater for all of the latest features and functionality across all of the major platforms, so that our clients are never left short. And the UK team has what we term as, I guess, front-end development, if you like, or they're the guys that build app by app. And we also have sales and marketing and the revenue and commercial team in the UK. So that's kind of the setup. Did that paint a picture there, Rob?
It really did. It's so interesting because you know, I've spent some time interviewing other companies that are involved in the cross-platform mobile application development space. So anything from native apps, you know, drag and drop GUIs, you know, in a kind of a Visual Studio like thing. That's a company called Saragon. All the way up to you know, a couple of these companies like Appcelerator or AppMobi, who do CSS, HTML compilation, but they do it. They allow you to use their platform, and it's self-published, self-development. But you've taken it so that you guys bought this company in Toronto, and now you've internalized that, and you're leveraging that platform to build for customers. Is that right?
Yeah, spot on. So I think there's a whole market out there catering for the long tail, and it's great. And it's certainly not one we're involved in right now. Yeah. We focus on building, as I mentioned, for the major brands, agencies, and businesses. Yeah. And our whole effort is attention to detail and creating really top quality, top-notch applications on two fronts. Number one, it's what's being asked of us of our clients. And number two, it's what the app stores really like to feature and highlight and promote. So it works well on both sides.
You said it really well when we were talking before we went live, that apps shouldn't be expensive, but they should be put together well, right?
Absolutely. Sorry, go on, Rob.
But that's I think what you're talking about is that, you know, the other platforms could be enabler platforms, but ultimately they could be hobbyists, they could be you know, developers inside of companies, but the differentiator, and that's just what I'm trying to get to, is the differentiator for Grapple versus some of these other platforms is that you create the brands and the experiences in the mobile environment, and all you're doing is leveraging a technology that you bought that enables the development of these apps cross-platform, but very quickly done, but complete. Is that?
Yeah, correct. So look, while we are aware that our technology is ahead of anything else out there in terms of coverage of number of handsets and also the ability of features and functionality we can incorporate, the difference is really the service that we provide with it. So I'll give you an analogy. I've recently moved and I'm massively into my power tools. I'm utterly useless at DIY, but I've got an awesome garage of everything you could possibly imagine. Yep. My whole issue is that I just can't apply them very well. And I really mean that. This is true. I'm not just kind of pulling this out of thin air. You can ask my girlfriend. But the whole thing is that actually it's all about the application of what you have to hand. So it's wonderful that there are these open source tools available to everybody, and I think it's fantastic because it's just broadening the space, raising awareness, getting more developers in the game, and that's awesome. But we would consider ourselves at kind of the real kind of tip of the pinnacle there, in the sense that we are taking these tools that can be used cross-platform, but we are applying them from a really professional services level aspect, and making sure that when we are building, it's not test and learn, it's actually final phase. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, what if we tried to do this on iPhone and then tried to do it on BlackBerry? Everything we do has been tried and tested. The company went through a launch phase. I mentioned we opened our doors in January over here in the UK for business as Grapple, but we didn't start trading until March. All we did was build, you could imagine the number of demo apps, sample apps, every feature, every functionality, to make sure that when it came to game day, that we were able to deliver. And I think that you're starting to see that with the announcements that we're making about the agencies and the brands we're working with.
Yeah, massive numbers, and we're going to come to that. I mean, but so what was your history? Where do you come from to be able to come into this space? So you said that you worked for ultimately a company that was bought by Nokia, but were you doing mobile stuff at that point as well?
Yeah, even before then. So before I joined Navtech, which was, as you mentioned, acquired by Nokia, I actually worked for a company called Blick. I was part of the launch team. Blick was an ad-funded mobile network, an MVNO, and the whole goal of the business was to provide people with free communication, but funded by brand messages, essentially. So SMS, MMS, some WAP, and so on. And it was ahead of its time.
Early days, very early days.
The founder of that business was a really great guy, and was the one that kind of threw me into mobile head first. A guy called Pekka Ala-Pietila, and he was the ex-president of Nokia Global. So obviously quite a figurehead in the industry anyway. Yes. And he really whet my appetite for where you could go with a mobile business. It went from 0 to 60 in a very short amount of time, and ultimately became part of Orange, which is a mobile network in Europe, part of France Telecom. Yep. So set the standard for what advertising should be in mobile in a messaging sense, and I just basically couldn't resist doing my own thing once I'd seen that level of success.
So and that's how you landed in Grapple, and so how many people are in Toronto now on the development team?
So actually, we've got a core development team of 5 in Toronto. Yeah. These guys, as I mentioned, have been working on the product from day one, and basically have seen the huge transition. When this was started, iPhone didn't even exist. Yeah. So they were looking at how they could create a platform initially for kind of handle the Java devices and the different functionalities there, and then iPhone and Android, and obviously the new iterations of BlackBerry and so on. And it's just really grown. So they're really the heartbeat of everything we do, and the UK office is what then takes that message to the end customer.
It's funny because in one of the companies that I ran, it was a mobile gaming company here in Ottawa, and we really started on the BlackBerry platform, but we also J2ME. We were deep and heavy into J2ME and the porting effort that was required in order to be able to get one single game on the 200 handsets that were available in North America on the carriers that we were being covered on, was a pain. Was very difficult to get 100% coverage. But then, every week there were 4 new devices that were being launched in some of these carriers. So, over a period of a month, we would have to add 20 new ports, and it just kind of escalates. And that was a huge issue 4 years ago.
Sure.
And are you still seeing that? Are Java-based, non-smartphones, I guess feature phones, are they still relevant to you guys? Your coverage is incredible. I mean, you cover all these different platforms. But
yeah, you know what? For me, it always comes down to what the client wants to achieve as a business objective. That's not to be confused with what our client wants to build as an app. Because it's so funny. You start talking to a lot of their then prospective clients, I guess, and become your current clients. Yep. And what we start with in terms of thinking and what we end up with in terms of actual logical app strategy are very different things 9 times out of 10. Yep. And that comes onto the feature phone piece. So a lot of the time, it's like, okay, what do you want your app to do in terms of features, and why do you want to do it, and what do you want people to use it for, and what's your target market. So the number of people that we talk to actually flip the feature phone, the total opposite of feature phone. Let's talk about iPhone for a second. And the number of people we talk to, and they just need an iPhone app. They have to have one. We need an iPhone app. You guys have come highly recommended. What can you turn around? And actually, the first kind of process we take them through is the demographics of the different platforms, because you find, often people mistake BlackBerry, for example, as, I don't want to go to Suits. I don't want to sell my product to city workers. It's like, are you aware of the huge spike in 16 to 24-year-old girls and guys, but predominantly females, that are buying into BlackBerry because of one app, because of BlackBerry Messenger? Yeah. It's saving their huge amounts on their phone bill every month because of text. And there's this burgeoning client base there that they have, that actually brands that ended up, that wanted to sell trainers and wanted to have an iPhone app to do that, have actually ended up with a BlackBerry application as well as an iPhone application. And you know what? You can't rule out Nokia either with that OV store. So actually, in terms of building for feature phones, for sure, I think it's super important. But I think the main thing is, who do you want to reach? Who have these phones, and how do you want to get to them?
Well, and I mean, well said, I think there, Alistair, because it is such a small percentage of the world's population who are using mobile devices are using these smartphones right now. Many of them are still using feature phones and text-based phones, and while it's growing, it's still not going to be dominant when it comes for quite some time. These smartphones. So when you talk about that, is that it just opened it up a little bit more, so that the strategy is, when you bring a client in, or a prospective client in, you're really the outcome of this might not be an iPhone app, might not be an app in general. It could be could it be just an SMS campaign, or could it be an SMS something, or could it be just a J2ME play? Does it matter to you guys? You just want to succeed, is that?
Yeah, well, you know what? For me, the most important thing for anyone in the mobile space to move forward is to have total clarity in what you're suggesting. Yeah. So that includes what Grapple is and the service that we provide. So we're just a center of excellence for applications. We won't handle SMS campaigns or any other mobile marketing. Okay. There are people totally capable of doing that on their behalf as well. You've got these new startups coming out in the UK, people like Lucidity Mobile, guys coming out of the big agency groups, WPP, that are really geared up to handle these kind of campaigns. Grapple is set purely to create applications for all of the major devices. But you know what? Sometimes a J2ME build is all a client would require. Yeah. If they just need a store finder and the ability to share content with friends, maybe just plug into Facebook Connect, draw down a small amount of data to, then no, you certainly don't need to build in accelerometer functionality and augmented reality, all this kind of stuff. It's just a waste of time and money for the client, and also a waste of time for the consumer as well. So as long as you come with the consumer's best interests at heart, this is, it sounds a rather emotional way of showing this, but it really is true. Come with the consumer's best interests at heart when you create this application, and you will end up with something that they want to use time and time again. If you come with a marketing objective to win your award, or just try and get 2 minutes of fame, and you try and ram it down a consumer's neck wrapped in the bundle of an application, then for sure app downloads might spike for a week, but next week you'll be out of the charts, and then also there'll be people in your organization questioning why you spent that money and what it's done for the business and how you intend to reinvest next time, and it's really difficult. So for us, actually, just building games, for example, 3D games, and it's great, and I love creativity, and I see wonderful examples of that all the time. But actually, to take that cross-platform, as you know well, for a marketing objective, so for a brand to ultimately end up wanting to sell more product, though they might have an intermediary stage of engagement or interaction, building a game in isolation is probably quite a bad idea 9 times out of 10. It's actually getting your app to drive business objectives, so getting people into a store, maybe getting to redeem something, getting them to share content with friends, tweet about it, comment on Facebook, all these kind of things that are seen as basic, actually really drive core business objectives, and brands and businesses can see that on their balance sheet. And I think that's more important than maybe catching a beer or going for a ride on a fun fair or whatever it might be,
it's funny because it's really no different than any other brand extension, right? So when people ran to the web 10 years ago, it was the same thing. It was there was a gold rush to get on the web. Everybody needed a website, and nobody really knew why, but they needed to do it. And so we're 10 years beyond that, and people rushing to create apps for no apparent reason. So. And in between, there was this advert game phase where everybody thought, listen, we're going to get into entertainment space by, we're going to advertise through games, and that way it's going to be kind of a soft sell, but they'll get some value out of it. Remember even here in North America, Burger King built a Burger King game to kind of, you downloaded the game. It was a racing game, and people, they thought that this was ingenious advertising and marketing. It may have been, but really what it comes down to is I'm a consumer, or I'm a potential user of your brand. I want to be incented to go into your store, and once I'm in your store, I want some value once I'm there.
Sure.
Or it's brand extension, right? So big brands trying to play in this space that help that reduce the decision making confusion around choosing that brand, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Is that accurate? Because I think that people sometimes think that the mobile space is a different world, but really what it is it's a natural extension, and it should be part of everybody's strategy. But it has to be the right application at the right place at the right time in order for it to be effective.
Yeah, quite right. Quite right.
Okay.
The whole, you mentioned advert gaming. It's fine, and it's a really good example. I think the first couple of brands to do it probably saw the most tremendous results. Yeah. But actually, I think when everybody jumps on the bandwagon, it just becomes irritating for the consumer. That's a great example of not thinking about what the consumer wants, because the consumer really wants to drive the race car. They don't really mind about the 30-second video that they have to watch first, or the fact that there are all these logos and all they want to do is enjoy the gameplay. So actually, that's where there are brand objectives at odds with what the consumer wants. Whereas what you and I are talking about in terms of the kind of apps that we're creating at Grapple, it's actually how can we help people get somewhere faster, get an offer they wouldn't otherwise have been able to get, share it with their friends in an easier way than beforehand, this kind of stuff. So what it's not is taking the hardware every time and trying to stretch it to its very limitations, and the software as well. What can we do with, how can we do something that's never been done before? It's actually going, what have we done previously? What worked, what didn't work, and how can we make it work better? Does that make sense?
It does. I ran a company in the late 90s that was, and we were building video as a kind of a point of sale video, so that if you were trying to decide between one drill and another drill, the drill that was our client would answer those three questions that you have in your head that were really an impediment to purchase. Right, so this was displayed on a handheld like a Palm Pilot back then, or at kiosks around the store, at the checkout counter, so that when you're trying to make that decision, at that moment, we're trying to alleviate any kind of indecision by saying, look, these are your three biggest questions. These are the answers to your three biggest questions. Pick it up and buy it. It's the same thing when you talk about the mobile space, is that, especially when it's about brands, is that ultimately consumers are, ultimately purveyors of brands are interested in understanding the value to them. And if you're positioned at the right place at the right time, you really have a great audience to be able to engage a little bit deeper and extend your relationship with them. But it's got to be done in a way that's beneficial, which is why I think we're seeing a lot of these guys leverage the location-based stuff around location-based marketing, like Foursquare, Gowalla, Scavenger, all these companies that are out there. Is that what are people coming to you looking for when it comes to brand extension and engagement with customers?
So the best thing is that we're finding, especially as we're coming out of what has been tough time economically, we're coming out with clients saying to us, whatever we do has to drive something within our core business metrics. And what they mean by that is we have objectives, we have goals that we have to achieve, and we're very, very accountable these days. And everything we do, including this app build right here, Grapple, everything we do has to link back to driving one of these goals. And it generally comes down to awareness, interaction, engagement, or sales. And the first three ultimately lead to the last one, because your shareholders really only care about sales. They don't care that people love your chocolate bar more. They just care if they buy it more often. Yeah. But we understand that there's an important role for the three intermediary stages. So we find that people are coming to us, and instead of saying just, we need an app that takes a photo and posts it to Facebook and da-da-da, they come and they say, look, we've probably got an audience of 500,000 people here aged between 20 and 35 that are relevant for buying our car, for example. We really need more test drives. How should we get them in? Is it do we have an app where you can customize the color of your car and change the seating and, add the modifications? Or do we have something where people can view exclusive video footage of the car racing around a mountain track, and can they share it with their friends? And ultimately you regress it all back to, well, who do you want to sell your car to? Is it boy racers that are going to really, that the video footage is going to really appeal to? Is it to a female audience that will want to know kind of what shades of blue, and this is all a very rough example I'm giving you, but you know what I mean, that they can do it, they can get really involved. And did you know that actually females spend longer interacting with branded application than guys do? Guys come in, they want the information and they want to get out. So they want the offer, or they want to watch the video and then leave again. And actually females use it far more for dwell time. So it'll be on the bus or the train on the way home, it'll be while they're waiting for their friends or whatever, and they're happy to go and customize and share, and they like it as a bit of a creative outlet. That's just what research has shown us. So it's about taking that and applying it differently to each client, and I think that's where the real value comes in. So with all that I've just said, it doesn't matter what tools we're using. So it's great about our technology, it's fantastic, and that really does give us a huge advantage. But you know what? Without the thinking behind it, it's kind of useless. So it'd be very much like, giving a machine gun to a 6-year-old. It's fine, they could do some real damage, but they might do real damage the wrong way. Do you know what I mean? They're not always going to be a really bad analogy there. I could have come up with anything. It's a good job aiming.
Machine gun to a 6-year-old.
Anyway. Yeah, that's a really bad analogy.
We'll come up with something. I'll give you some time to think about it. I mean, but you're right. I mean, it's a pretty vivid thought. Is that the tool is one thing, but the thought that goes into it is I mean, ultimately you can't replace that. You can put anything into a mobile device. You can build software for these. You can build applications for these tools, but ultimately they'll toil with 250 or 300,000 other applications that are up there that aren't getting any kind of play or awareness.
You see, that's the whole thing. There are all these developers out there, and this is why people are even saying now, it's such a congested space already, such a congested space. How do we know who to choose? And we're just going to go with someone who's cheap. We're just going to go for the cheapest one, right? Because everyone's the same. And actually, it's just not the case. It must be a bit like when you go to a distributor, for example, and you say, I want to be stocked in X, Y, and Z stores, and there'll be lots of people that have lots of access to these retailers, but it's the ones who can get the gondolas on the front that you're really interested in. It's the guys that can get you at the front of the App Store, and Grapple share excellent working relationships with all of the major handset manufacturers and all the leading app stores. In particular, places people that don't always think of first, but ones with massive growth, like Ovi, for example, with Nokia. They have been super proactive in the past 6 months in attracting brands and just other developers and getting into their app store, publishing lots of case studies, and they're also really open to working with businesses and brands that can improve consumer experience, which is ultimately, I think, a massive part of what apps can play as well. So there's that compared to some of the other app stores' approach to kind of insisting that apps go through a very stringent approval process, which is fine, so it ensures quality, but then black boxing it and not making it available for kind of human intervention and discussion, I think can sometimes prove a little challenging to the lone developer, to the guy developing in his bedroom. I mean, for us, we're a business, we're geared up for that, we expect it, so our approval times are always very good. But different app stores have different policies.
It's funny because I'm in North America. And you see it because you've got offices in Toronto. Nokia doesn't really have a presence in North America. No matter how hard they try, no matter what their hardware is always, they're way in advance of screen resolution, and their hardware is always beautiful and slim, and their OS is terrible, as an opinion. But a lot of mobile OS is terrible, but they just haven't been able to get the traction here. So we don't see a lot of, we don't hear a lot about Nokia and Ovi here in North America. It's dominated obviously by Android and iPhone, and then our homegrown
RIM, BlackBerry are massive, hey?
Yep. Well, they are first to market. I mean, they're still the #1 handset manufacturer in North America, but I mean, they're under a lot of pressure. So we don't see a lot of Nokia. So we don't have a lot of advantage. So is there momentum coming from Nokia as a result of Ovi and what they're doing?
Oh, absolutely. I think there certainly is, and The great thing is that market share never stays the same. So it's constantly changing for bad and for good with everybody. And the great thing from a consumer perspective, just to talk as a layman outside of the mobile industry, is that everybody is constantly striving now to improve and improve on their consumer offering. Yeah. Now, sometimes the networks can be a little counterproductive in the sense that these incredible handsets come out and then you have to pay an absolute fortune to get hold of one because of your monthly price plan, at least how it is over here in Europe. But look, I think that what Nokia have in their back pocket and what's coming to market, Nokia World's happening in September. I know they're going to be announcing some really great handsets, some really hot handsets. There lots of talk about potential for HD content. Which is fantastic, and the ability to actually take HD content from the handset and then play it through a larger screen. So actually using it as a portable media device that can up as well as download is fantastic. We're actually working with Nokia to produce some apps for Nokia World. So I've kind of had a little sneak peek on that too. So look, I think obviously everybody has their own preference from a consumer perspective on which handsets they're using. I think I've always had and will always have big plans for North America. It's just such a huge and lucrative territory. Yes. But I think it's going to be really interesting. I definitely think that the battle is going to increase and intensify. And apps is going to be very much at the center of it. So hardware is going to be one thing, but apps, as they have proved for Apple, will be a differentiating factor in people's purchase decision. Funny question I got asked by my 8-year-old niece was, can I get Angry Birds on this? She said, holding up a Samsung Toco. She'd been using my iPad. And of course the answer is no. To the best of my knowledge, you can't get Angry Birds on your Samsung Toco. But it's so funny because it's already creeping into the mindset. This is someone who, I mentioned, 8 years old, right? She will never, ever own a PC, ever, as in a desktop computer. She will only ever own a laptop, which she rarely uses. She's glued to a mobile phone, owns one at 8 years old, and has all the games, albeit a lesser equivalent of Snake. I think she's managed to get on there on a card matching game. But to her, it's just Ace, and those are her apps, and that will just evolve. I think it's great. So I think it's just to come back to your point, I think that for sure Nokia have lots of fight left in them from North America. Then again, so do the other guys too. I think BlackBerry are just going to continue to evolve and improve. OS 6 looks really exciting for BlackBerry. Great things to happen from an app perspective for that. So no, I see it as really positive and a great place to be for everybody.
It's pretty amazing, and I think that the global mobile population is big enough for all these guys to participate. I don't think that there's going to be a dominant player like there is at the beginning, like RIM was. I think that even if you're all split across 20% market share, that's a good business.
Oh, for sure, for sure. You know what, Rob? What's 10% of 6 billion? Do you know what I mean? Or however many billion they're reporting now? You get all this kind of oversaturation. You hear about these amazing markets like the Middle East, the UAE, Dubai, where penetration is at over 100%. It means that people have on average more than one device. And the refresh rate, the purchase rate on those devices is less than a year. They're buying phones before their contracts expire. It's nuts, and also it's incredibly lucrative from a marketer's perspective. You can sell some serious high-end product there. Why would you not want to look at, even looking at really niche markets? You talk about operating systems and the bugbear, how you think they're bad. I mean, the thing that always makes me laugh are Virtu. I really like it as I really like it. I was going to give you my accent. Too many V's. Virtu, fantastic concept, right? They've gone and created these really high-end handsets for very, very wealthy individuals, but the operating system leaves a lot to be desired of. But to someone like Rolls-Royce or Rolex, or name any high-end brand you want, they would give their left arm to be on that device or on the devices selling, even if there are only 1,000 sold in a year. The market share will be 0.00 whatever percent you want to put on it. But it would be invaluable to be able to access those consumers. So it all comes down to who are you, what are your business objectives, and who do you want to reach?
It does come back to that, and you're willing to spend if you can actually be delivered your customer base. So a bunch of questions came out of this. Is that I'm so intrigued by what's going on in the handset, but I'm a software guy, and apps are software, and ultimately it doesn't really matter what the hardware manufacturers are doing. OS, yes, that software layer that sits on it, the capabilities of the handsets, but they're all pretty standard right now, anyways. And when you've amped it up and it's got a bottle opener and a camera and a compass and a little torch and a knife and a fork, there's not much more that you can add to it that is of real value until you add that software layer on top of it, right? So, how important is the handset? Does it matter anymore? Because, I use an iPhone, but I use a BlackBerry. I was a Palm guy for a long time, and I was a Windows Mobile guy. And, I look at Android now, and I think, well, maybe Android's next. Does it really matter? To your niece's point, I just want to be able to play Angry Birds across all of them, and I don't care.
Yeah, you know what? Does it matter? It all comes down, and this sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's not. We can go into detail on it. All comes down to the way it's built. So it comes down to the point that you and I were talking about earlier. So as long as the developer truly understands the limitations and also the huge positives that each different piece of hardware offers, and they can kind of tap into that, and it's built with that in mind, then fantastic. If you can take into account the intricacies on what we term as like a candy bar phone, so a feature phone, with the triple tap keys, and then be able to also consider that when you go to create the BlackBerry version of your application, and then also then be able to take all of those intricacies and spread it across the touchscreen devices, whether they be Apple, whether they be Nokia, whether they be Android, then for sure, you are going to render hardware virtually obsolete. But actually you find that most developers probably fall short of satisfactory standard across everything. And I think this is where having a tool that can remove some of the heavy thinking, heavy lifting in this development process is really important. Almost if you don't have to think about the pieces that, apart from the finer points, do you know what I mean? Apart from, the developer's job is to go into real detail. So I definitely don't believe in, and Grapple certainly doesn't offer a system where you type your code, you bash it out and click compile, and then that's it. You're ready to submit to App Store. Of course you go in, of course you tweak and refine and make sure you get the best possible experience, the most native experience on every different platform. But actually a cookie cutter approach, for me, not great. This is talking from a consumer perspective. I feel it as a consumer when I download one, like, I reckon I've kind of played with something like this before. It just feels very much a same. And you know what? From a brand and a business perspective, utterly unacceptable. Yeah. No one brand ever wants to feel like they've got secondhand, your hand-me-downs from the guy that was bigger and paid more money, and you can just have the same. Not good enough for anybody.
It's funny because, you hit on another point. Many points here, Alistair, but you hit on that point is that, you want to take away the mundane, which is, getting the application to work is one thing, but getting it to work really, really, really well, attention to detail, the focus on how it interacts with you, the focus on what buttons do, the fact that you don't get into dead ends, the fact that it's an elegant experience across all platforms, the fact that, it doesn't matter. If I hit this button on an Android, with iPhone, BlackBerry, Nokia device, it does the same thing, right? That kind of interaction, it's an elegance that has to be brought to the applications, and that's really where developers should be focusing their time, not on the nuts and bolts of connecting it to a database and getting a record back. It's the elegance of the application.
Correct. So for me, it's just testing. And I say it 3 times, so I believe it has 3 levels. With us, there's soft testing. So actually on screen, we have great simulators, emulators. We're able to run the code, see what you're doing. That's fantastic. And there are loads of people I hear about, they go, oh yeah, we have something like that too. And then we just put it to market. And I say, you don't download, we do a couple of devices. I said, well, how many are you trying to Oh, well, it's available on 50, but we tested it on 5 because we just figured device families, it's all okay. For me, not really good enough, because you know what? It's going to run at different speeds based on power of the device and so on. And so all these little intricacies that people just don't factor in. So test soft for sure. Test to make sure that the code you've written is good. Then test hard. Get it on as many devices as you can and test it yourself and get your fellow developers to test with you. So we have a whole setup where actually someone will write the app and the guy sat opposite him working on a totally different project will test the app just to sanity check it, and then independently test it. Get it out to another business. It doesn't actually cost huge sums of money. There are loads of organizations set up to do it, a testing house. Get them to test it too, a big rubber stamp of approval, and also get it to your client, factor this into the development process, get it to your client to test too, and have them involved. I see it very much like commission commissioning a portrait. You don't just sit there and then at the end, the artist turns around and gives you the canvas back and says, there you go, it's all done. Can you leave my studio now? Actually, what happens is you do sit there. For sure, they do paint it. And you go around, you check it, and you say, actually, I don't like the fact that you're giving me a necklace when I don't have a necklace on. I didn't ask for a necklace. All that kind of stuff. So it's just about, be logical. And in fact, this would be my one criticism. I'm not a developer. It would be my one criticism of developers as a genre. So it's very, very broad, and it's not intended to offend in any way. But I think often there is the potential to not always rationalize and be the most, take the most logical approach to stuff. It's more like the most technical approach.
Yeah.
How can I make sure that I'm doing everything right technically, when actually in the real world it might make a little more sense just to tweak and not do that and do something slightly different,
Yeah.
But it's great. Everybody lives and learns. It's such an early space. It's okay to look at the bad apps out there and look at the good apps too, as long as you take the best from both. So learn about what people did right and learn about what people did wrong. And the best thing is, Rob, for me, nothing will stay the same. Okay, if you do something right 3 months ago and you go and look again and go, great, I'm going to do the same thing now, I guarantee you won't experience the same level of success. I've seen it happen many times. You have to reinvent and reinvigorate what you did last time to do the new thing next. Okay, so it's great case studies and looking back, and that was successful on 100,000 downloads and 500,000 downloads, and okay, fine. But unless you come up with something original and something that is relevant, you just aren't going to have anywhere near the same levels that the guy previously experienced.
Well, I think that's great advice. I'm certainly going to highlight that, because you're right, and especially when you're working with brands, they expect a little bit more, and you're not just representing your own company, you're representing their brand, and so it could have massive repercussions.
Oh, for sure. Hey, Ro, can you excuse me 1 second? I'm just going to grab a drink. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Thanks. Go.
We could do it like X Factor, and I could just hold it up like that so you could see the brand, or I was going to say
it was perfect, because your Grapple sign behind was perfectly squared. It was I could have just left it as an ad.
I can promise you that wasn't deliberate, even though Amy is incredibly astute. I think that was an accident. It's nice. People walk in and see that. The entrance is the other side. Anyway, sorry, I stopped you mid-flow. Tell me.
No, I was just, I'm asking, so do you think that, we talked a little bit earlier on about the number of, applications out there. Do you think that that this is going to be dominated by brands at some point? Do you think that the smaller guy who's building, niche product, like, so in North America, Foursquare is huge. I don't know what it's like in Europe. If you have any of these location-based check-in services like Foursquare, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
But then Facebook comes out with Facebook Places, right? And Facebook is a big enough brand that ultimately, if it does it half as well, it's got 500 million users compared to the 4 million or 8 million that use Foursquare. I love people who say, well, I'm really happy that they're in our business because it validates the market. But usually that means that we're out of business in 3 or 4 months because somebody like this comes in and dominates. Do you think that that's what happens in mobile as well? It happened on the web. It happens in mobile. Like, you don't see many independent bookstores online other than Amazon, right?
No, I totally hear it. But from an app perspective, I think there will always be the role of an independent or a smaller house of development. And I think that there is the role of the larger brands and businesses is increasingly being understood. So what you'll see, ultimately, it just comes down to who's offering the consumer the most value, as we've spoken about, all the way through this interview. Actually, it's a good strand to comment on, and I think that the smaller outfits will be able to adjust and acclimatize to changes more rapidly. So they'll be cutting edge, and they will continue to be acquired and JV'd in partnership with by the big guys. And the big guys will pump out these really robust systems that allow people to buy into apps and trust them and let it become a credible part of their lives. So, m-commerce is just becoming not only more and more real through applications, but actually more and more trusted. It will get to a point where you will be able to make major purchases through an application and not wonder if actually your credit card details have gone to some country you've never heard of. Yep. It will be commonplace. Very much like, it's not like, if I said to you, I just bought my flight through an app, you'd be like, wow, did did you just spent $1,000 through an app? Are you sure? Is that okay? You know, are you going to check your bill? Whereas if I say, oh yeah, I just bought my flight online, you just carry on drinking your coffee, right? It's cool. That's what everybody does. So I think it's moving that way. But as long as I said, yeah, I bought my flight through the Expedia or the Emirates or the British Airways app or whatever it might be, if I turn around and say, yeah, I bought it through this app that you've never heard of, and they've just sprung up, and actually they're only on, I downloaded it on my Sony Ericsson. That's where, you know, they're kind of running Symbian. They start, not the Android versions, that's all okay. They start going, that's when you'd start questioning me, going, you sure that's okay? I've never heard of that app. It doesn't make much sense. So no, I think the smaller guys will provide a service, and I think the bigger guys will provide a service, and I think it'll differ. I really do.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Why don't we give me an example of something that you're very proud of that Grapple's done with a customer that's out there that you know, that you guys were very successful in delivering for them the experience that they wanted and targeting their customer base. I mean, what are you guys proud of?
So I'll give you an example of our very first piece of work, actually, because it's mildly amusing as well. We had over here earlier this year the UK general elections to vote for government, and we were just starting to win our first accounts. Right, we're in final stage pitch work, all this kind of stuff, and a fantastic agency called Glue, part of the Aegis group, like really, you know, many awards, huge digital prowess, and they came to us and they said, look, we have a client, a political party called the Green Party, right? And they said, you know, we just need to be able to engage with everybody. We can't have exclusive marketing, so an app on one platform is just not on our radar, and we can't produce it in the budget. It's, you know, they're a slightly less mainstream political party, so they don't have huge funding, and I think they had 3 weeks until the general election. Now, we managed to produce an app, only a small app for the UK Green Party, and it helped to basically profile you and ultimately led you down the path that you're more green than you could possibly imagine. You should share these results with your friends through your social network. Yeah. But it was a really cute touch. It was covered on all of the blogs from the candidates in the Green Party running for the seats in Parliament. And ultimately, they ended up winning one seat, their first ever seat in UK Parliament. Now, I'm not claiming that was just the app. They had a really great campaign across the board. But the mobile piece played a part to what was essentially became an award-winning piece. They were accredited by the IAB. They won a digital marketing award, the Internet Advertising Bureau, and that was our very first piece of work. But it's so funny. Now, while I think the app is great and performs a function, it was built in less than 2 weeks and on a shoestring budget from the client and performed the role it was meant to. You know, we're now working with clients like T-Mobile over here in the UK, people like Xbox, other brands like Sony Pictures, British Telecom, and we're in a state where actually you look back and it's a bit like, I guess it's a bit like graduating from college and your art degree, and you look back and at the other stuff you used to do when you were 5 and you were drawing in crayon. Do you know what I mean? It's like that. You watch the transition, but it's fantastic. The important thing is learning, and it's always providing clients with what they expected and what they wanted, I think, more to the point. And just for you, because I know we've had the Canada discussion as well, we work with a couple of fantastic agencies in the chain. We've all been part of a group that produced the application for Molson's, the Seize the Summer campaign. So they have an awesome Facebook app produced by their digital agency, and we just played a part in the delivery of their mobile applications cross-platform. So it is available on iTunes, also available on Android, BlackBerry, Nokia, and so on. And really was, in fact, it's our best piece of work in Canada so far. Something we're very proud of. And if you go on and check the Facebook,
it's around beer. It's popular in Canada, right?
Yeah, exactly. As you can imagine, it is certainly around the brand. But it's encouraging people to seize the summer and go ahead and perform certain tasks. So you have to go and spot wildlife, go camping. It will track you through your GPS, obviously, once you opt in and allow it. And then you have to verify and prove that you've done what you've done. And it's all via taking photos and uploading. There's heaps of interaction, not just through mobile, but driven back through social networks and the web as well. Really very well thought out by the other agencies that provide the creative and the strategic. But it's just an example. The nice thing is, yeah, for sure, launch territory UK, this is where the sales and the front end work is done. But we are working with truly global clients. I mean, we go from calls from Beijing to Riyadh across to Toronto. It's fantastic. But this is the way of doing business nowadays. You know, anyone just developing for one country or one concept or one platform is just going to get left behind. There's just no time or space for that, I don't think.
I totally agree with you. It's a you know, and you don't have to be in one location. Even as you've shown, your team can be elsewhere.
Sure.
So what's the future for you guys? You know, I know you've only been really a company since January. You really launched in March. So now we're at the end of the summer of 2010. What do you got? What do you see for Grapple going forward, Alistair?
So really, really very exciting. For me, there aren't any boundaries in terms of clients who want applications and where they want them. And they have all these different marketing campaigns all across the board. So what they're running in Europe differs wildly to what they're running in Asia, and what they're running in North America to what they're running in South America. So actually, we have an obligation to grow to service our clients properly. And of course, we're looking at that right now. And all the major territories that you could possibly imagine are, of course, on our radar. For me, we're very collaborative. We are willing to work with anybody, and we empower agencies of all types, digital, traditional, whether they're strategic, creative, whatever. We work with everybody. So actually, that's a great way of scaling your efforts very, very quickly, so that you don't have to have massive skyscrapers in every town. But for me, it's like, yep, always hiring, always looking for new business. And I don't see any slowdown on what we've done already. So, I hope we get the chance to talk down the line, maybe 6 months, a year down the line, and I can report a whole stack of new offers and a whole stack of new clients. But put it this way, just we're very grateful for where we are so far. Had a great set of clients and met a great set of people that have really helped us, this being a prime example. And we're just really open-eyed. We'll do whatever makes sense in the future for our clients, for us, but also for the consumers.
Well, look, I really appreciate, it's a great story. It seems like you've got a great burgeoning team, some great mentorship, as we were talking about before we went live, some people that have done this before, guiding, not pointing, but certainly keeping within the guardrails. Some great brands that have, you're engaged with, and really a great centered approach to application development for these devices. Not only that it's cross-platform, because that's as we said, you have to do that. It has to have the same experience across platform if it's necessary, but the approach where the application fills into your business goals, I think, is something that sometimes gets lost. And so from a business perspective, I appreciate what you guys are doing to fill those gaps where apps really do serve a great purpose and advance this industry, the mobile industry, and don't put it in a shed some great light on the power of the application and the power of this platform.
For sure.
So, Alistair, I would like to come back to you in 6 months and see how things are going, and maybe even hook up when you're in Toronto, at a future date where we can actually see how things are going in with the Canadian group as well, and any other Canadian clients that you're working through.
For sure, we're just expanding. We just got a new office, so I'd love to show you. We're very proud.
Well, I'm gonna follow up on that. So, we've been. Where do people find you, Alistair?
So grapplemobile.com.
Yep.
We're on Twitter. We are at virtually all of the major mobile events in the UK and across Europe.
Yep.
So AdTech, I think, will be the next one in London, just in case there's anybody watching over here. And yeah, I mean, we're very, very easy to get hold of. So website's often the best port of call to start.
The best protocol. So I've been speaking with Alistair Crane, who is the CEO of Grapple Mobile. I really appreciate you taking the time here. I know it's the end of the day for you. And sharing the story of what you guys are doing, because I think it's a worthwhile story that people should hear, and the conversation was great. Thank you so much, Alistair.
Thanks very much, Rob. My pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Bye.